Welcome back to the United Pubcast. G'day everyone. Match day. Doesn't feel like a match day, but the games are coming thick and fast. Crystal Palace, 7 a.m. in the morning here in Sydney. So we thought we'd go live for a bit of a pre-match chat in regards to the Crystal Palace match and a lot of football. As you can see, it's only me here at the moment. Larry will be with us. A little bit of a later show tonight, usually about 6:30 or 7:30 Australian time. So I'm not sure how he is late, but I'm sure he'll be here very soon and with a fantastic apology. But before he does get to the stream, I'll say g'day to everyone in the live chat. Good to have everyone in here. Rob, always good to see you, mate. We'll get into the Jadon Sancho stuff, of course. I haven't seen any training photos, but obviously he's confirmed that he's back in training. So we'll discuss that at length. Does that mean he gets back into the team for the Crystal Palace match or in the matchday squad? I'm not sure. Do let us know, but we'll get into all that. Matt, good to see you, mate. Hope all is well. George, as always. Mike, good to see you. And Justin from the Supporters Club as well. So before we get into so there's four talking points you can probably see from the title in regards to Alejandro Garnacho, Jadon Sancho, obviously the Sir Jim Ratcliffe news, and obviously a little bit of news in regards to Harry Maguire and a potential loan move. I heard Aston Villa, but what I've heard in the last couple of hours does look potentially West Ham are showing a bit of an interest. So we'll get into all those things. But before Larry joins us, because I want to discuss those with him, we'll discuss the match a little bit. So put your thoughts in the live chat and also sort of bounce off them in regards to the match in the morning, or the morning here in Australia, obviously nighttime in the UK. After the Manchester City match, I was saying go full strength. Even in our match preview, I was saying go full strength, play your strongest midfield and just get the job done. I understand there's a risk with potential yellow cards and injuries and fatigue. Of course, that's a risk. But I was just weighing it all up and think, no, go full strength, beat Crystal Palace. That's what champions do. 12 hours before kickoff, I'm thinking stuff that I'm open for full rotation. Like now the nerves have kicked in with potentially seeing Casemiro suspended if he picks up a yellow card. If Fred picks up a yellow card, he's suspended. And with all those sort of permutations, I'm thinking, well, hang on. It's not worth risk. I think this is where you do have to rotate. So it's funny how football works. I was thinking the complete opposite on Saturday, Sunday. Here we are on match day, and I have no idea what I want to do. And that is why Erik ten Hag, I think, he's paid the big bucks in regards to it's his decision. He has to sort of put his balls on the line and decide what is right. Do let me know what you think is right, because I called for a midfield of Casemiro, Eriksen and Bruno Fernandes. Now, I know that's our full-strength midfield, and that is what – well, probably actually won't go with that against Arsenal. We would assume Bruno might probably go to the right, and Fred will come in and partner Eriksen in midfield with Casemiro. So that is what I was thinking, go full strength. But now I'm thinking I can't risk Casemiro and Fred. Now, would I start Fred against Arsenal? Probably not for me, but I understand why Erik ten Hag will, and if Erik ten Hag wants to, I'm fully behind that decision. So with the importance of Casemiro and Fred, I just think start putting them on a yellow card, or the risk of sort of getting them a yellow card and suspended for that Arsenal game. I just think it's so important. If you were to take 4 points in this out of these next two games, but weigh them up on what was the more important game, I think you'd much rather draw this game and get the 3 points against Arsenal. I think you need to will them back in. So Larry, good to see you, mate. I was just asking a question to all the people in the live chat. If you have to take 4 points from this game, 4 points from these next two games, a draw and a win, which one are you taking the draw and the win in?
What kind of question is that?
Well, no, it's important because could you imagine the outrage if we draw tomorrow? It'll be sacked, obviously not sacked ten Hag, but you know the outrage will be sell all these players, they're not fit to wear the shirt. That'll be the reaction whenever we drop points now. I'm just thinking that's not what's needed to go into Arsenal. Now, the correct answer is obviously beat Arsenal and Crystal Palace. But in terms of, I'll just discuss in terms of the need to go pretty strong to win this game against Palace, or the possibility of rotation.
Yeah, I know. Look, tongue-in-cheek, the Palace game is the winnable game, obviously, and the onus will be on Arsenal to win at home. At the end of the day, we've beaten the North London side earlier this season. We know we can get the job done, but they are a team in form, and they are going to be difficult to beat. I think Palace is the one, because you're coming off the back of a major victory against Manchester City, a game that many didn't have us favoured to win, and I'm sure that includes a lot of United fans. So I suppose to back up that victory, 3 points against Palace is the must for me.
Yeah, no, look, I've come around to that thinking, but also the importance of the Arsenal match. So before we get into the sort of four big talking points, Larry, just on this Crystal Palace match, I'll just discuss in my thoughts earlier in the week was go full strength. And now here, a couple of hours before kickoff, saying, no, I want full rotation. I'm quite scared of the yellow cards and fatigue. So just in regards to midfield, don't worry about forwards or Weghorst or at the back in regards to Wan-Bissaka or Martinez. Just in midfield, what's your midfield three for tomorrow?
I think Bruno Fernandes is a sure thing. I mean, no one's really talking about the number 10 position, but if we got a problem at striker, I think you could argue, considering we play with a number 10, you could argue that we're pretty poor in that aspect too. I think Bruno plays because he always plays. Behind that, I could see it being. It'd probably be McTominay, Ericsson. My hunch would be to go with Fred, but I think Fred is going to be crucial in the Arsenal match, much like he was in the Manchester City game. So I'd be looking to rest Casemiro as much as I would be looking to rest Fred.
Yeah, no, well, that's what I've come around to in my line of thinking. That's what I've settled on now for tomorrow. I think McTominay and Ericsson, who did sort of form a decent partnership earlier in the season. So I'd go McTominay, Ericsson with Bruno Fernandes ahead of them. The Sports Capital, good to see you in here, mate. We'll win tonight 2-0 and then 3-1 against Arsenal. I will take that every day of the week, mate. Justin, I hope I don't eat my words, but Palace are woeful. If we go in 80% strong and rest Casemiro, Rashford, I'm happy with that. I think we can get the job done with the likes of McTominay and Garnacho. Look, I completely agree, Justin. That sort of comes on to my last point before we do move on. George here saying Casemiro can't be playing in this game tonight on a yellow card, which that's my fear now, which is why I'm alluding to that.
When does the card system reset? Because there is a point in the season a reset.
After Arsenal. Okay. I think it then goes to 10 yellow cards potentially. So I think it's after Arsenal, one more game potentially. I'm not sure who we play after Arsenal, but I think it's there. And George, for the week so he will definitely play. My thing in regards to a lot of that midfield discussion and rotation on Twitter is stemming around Scott McTominay. Do you throw Scott McTominay in our weakest player? And I just think, forget his transfer talk and sort of rumours of a move away. I just look at he's not going to gain confidence. He's playing with a little bit of lack of confidence at the moment. He's not going to gain confidence later when we depend on him when there's an injury crisis by not playing now. I think you put him in now and around a strong team and you get the job done, well, he'll have that little bit more confidence. He's not going to get that sitting on the bench. So that is why I would go McTominay here, but I understand a lot of people won't. But Larry, we'll move on to the 4 talking points. We've got Jim Ratcliffe, Jadon Sancho, Harry Maguire, and Alejandro Garnacho. We didn't really discuss this before. What topic do you want to start on? And we'll get cracking.
Well, I think the interesting one to start off is obviously Jim Ratcliffe, because I think everything else that we talk about kind of falls off that, really. You could almost say that it's almost secondary. Let me ask you this. So we've been linked to Dubai. We've been linked to Qatar. We've been linked to Afghanistan, China, Japan, Australia. And I'm just listing every country that exists at this point. No, in all seriousness, Tom, we've been linked with a lot of parties, governed states. We've been linked with US investors, a lot of who have been linked with Chelsea. Let me ask you this. Jim Ratcliffe, supposedly a Manchester United supporter growing up, is he your preferred choice as a potential owner? And if he is, tell me why.
I don't think I've got the information to have a preferred choice. I think we can get into, which I'm sure will come into discussions later on down the line, we'll get into a huge sort of geopolitical debate in regards to the factors that are influencing people's sort of opinions there. But ultimately, if it's somewhere from Qatar or Saudi Arabia or USA or Jim Ratcliffe in Manchester, I don't have the information to who's my preferred bid. Like, is Jim Ratcliffe going to come in and treat it as a solely as a business and not a sports winning team? I'm not sure. Someone could look at Nice in France and how he's done that. I'm not sure. Could an American come in and splash the cash like Todd Boehly or run the club like the Glazers? I'm not sure. So without sort of, I need this, whether it's going to become public or not in the bidding process. If they're going to sort of, a bidder is going to give their sort of plan on what they're going to do, maybe I might change my opinion. But at the moment, if they've all got the money, they've all got potential to be great owners and they've all got potential to be bad owners. So I'm not sure. So I don't have the information, but I'll bring up a tweet here just in regards to the latest information we do have. So Jim Ratcliffe, Fabrizio Romano confirming here. There's a statement put out by Sir Jim Ratcliffe's people at Ineos has entered the bidding process to buy Man United. Their spokesman said, we've formally put ourselves into the process of bidding. The spokesman has told Time Sports. So Jim Ratcliffe is the first one to go public, with other groups also interested. So at the moment, what do you make from that, Larry, in regards to, okay, he's confirming his interest, but does that mean he's actually put in a bid in, or does this business process mean that he's just going to talk about potentially putting a bid in, he's going to sort of see what the situation is, or do you take this quote as confirmed, okay, money is going into the Glazers' pocket here? If they accept it or not, it's up to them. But is this a confirmed bid for you, or he's interested?
No, I don't see it as a confirmed bid. If you're, I'm familiar with the world of business. I work in a corporate setting, and the way it normally works is you basically, you go through the process, you engage with the business. So normally they might be like, we're accepting tender offers, for example, or it's just for example, we're just gathering interest. So what I imagine has happened is Ineos would have had some informal discussion with the Glazers at this point. Now it looks like so that would just be, are you interested? Yes or no. And that would be Manchester United actually disclosing as part of that process what the financials look like. So with this being now saying Ineos has entered the bidding process, I would take that into, they're now going into a micro look at Manchester United's financial situation, and I suppose forecasted expenditure, revenues, different values of different assets, etc. And then at that point, I would imagine that's where Sir Jim Ratcliffe would have to decide if he wants to actually make a formal bid. And I imagine not just Sir Jim Ratcliffe, I would imagine every other party is going through this process as well. So it'll be really interesting to see. But the crucial point here, Tom, is if they're saying they're going through the formal bidding process, he absolutely is aware of Manchester United's financial situation. So that's probably the most interesting point.
Yeah, no, definitely good insight there. If you are interested, or if you're content sort of Jim Ratcliffe is leading your race to be Man United's owner, please do leave a like on the video and comment as to why. Just on that, Larry, before we move on, just on Ratcliffe, I'm sure we'll have Qatar discussions later and Dubai and American discussions. Jim Ratcliffe sort of leads the sort of, I'd say, PR race in England in the media. I think the fan base is kind of split in regards to Jim Ratcliffe and Middle Eastern investment, because obviously the perception we have of Middle Eastern investment in regards to the funds available, it looks like that'll be the biggest investment in regards to the transfer market. You don't know sort of what Jim Ratcliffe's sort of tendency will be in that regard. But in regards to he is leading some type of race in regards to public perception. I'm just thinking, is that down to as I said, a geopolitical thing in terms of he's English, or he's a Manchester United fan? Just why do you think he is leading sort of certain parts of this race?
Yeah, it's a great question, and I think it's multifaceted. I'll start with the obvious one. I think the fan base is burnt by the Glazers, and lazily, and I have to be honest, I do think it's lazy. I think a lot of United fans are looking at the Glazers, seeing that they're Americans and saying, okay, we don't want American business investors. I think it's very easy to look down the country and see what Todd Boehly is doing at Chelsea, and you're almost vindicated by that sentiment if that's how you feel. What I would say, however, is the lack of desire for investment from the Middle East, I think, is a bit misguided. And I say that because I think, without getting too political about this, I think there is an element of racism in that. And by that...
100% there is.
And the thing is, unless it's a governed state, if you're taking exception to a governed state investing in Manchester United, I support your judgment. I don't want Manchester United associated with a country. The brand is big enough on its own. But if you're against a private investor who happens to be from Dubai, Qatar, etc., then I'm sorry, you're misguided in your way of thinking, and to
also,
be honest, your basis is racist. I've got
look,
no issue.
You're 100% in regards to let's say Saudi Arabia, for example. The Saudi Arabians who I forget if they're in charge of the Newcastle bid or in and around that, who were involved in those sort of political disputes a couple of years ago with the Turkish. I don't want to get into all that, but if you see a person like that and you think, okay, well, hang on, what's happening here? But if it's Larry from Saudi Arabia who lives on 34th Street, who has nothing to do with that, he's just a person who lives there, well, with a lot of money, does that change the debate?
Exactly, and that's exactly the point. But the problem is the majority, and I hate to say that, but the majority of United fans, because of the media, the way we consume media, social media, and people's inability to think independently and do their own thorough research, will tell you, oh, the guy from Saudi Arabia is investing. He's linked to Mohammed bin Salman, who had the death, who was responsible for the death of the Turkish and American journalist. And that's the problem, right? But this is where we're at. It's the equivalent of Larry from Australia wanting to buy Manchester United and someone accusing me of being Anthony Albanese's side man. The reality is that's not the case, but Australia is not linked with all these hate crimes, etc., that we're seeing with the Middle East.
Yeah, no, look, it's a very good point, and look, I'm sure we haven't far deeper discussions in in good time, especially when we get more information on who these bidders are. But I think that is a good way to look at it in regards to. That's why I just want more information about the people. I need more information about Jim Ratcliffe, for God's sake. Yeah, okay, it's good he's a Man United fan, and English wants the best for the club. What's he going to do with the money? Yeah, that's what I need to know. So we'll move on in regards to money. You're going to say something? I'll let you.
I just want to make one final point on Jim Ratcliffe. I think Rob made the comment earlier. I don't think Jim Ratcliffe's money is enough. I think the money is enough. The concern that I would have with a Jim Ratcliffe-backed investment is...
I feel it's Ineos, not so much Jim Ratcliffe. I feel it's his company's buying it.
It is. It would be Ineos, which is the chemical company that Jim Ratcliffe founded, owned, and developed, and made it into the global phenomenon that it is. Now, to give you a bit of insight into Ineos, they are a chemical group. They were founded in 1998, and Jim Ratcliffe holds 2/3 of the business. To give you a bit of perspective into Ineos's financial stake or their financial performance, so this is a little bit outdated, so please forgive me, but in 2001, their revenue was projected at $65 million US dollars. Okay, 65 billion US dollars. So they're not short of coin. I think they're absolutely financially capable of backing Manchester United. I think the concern, however, would be, and to your point, Tom, we don't know how much investment is considered substantial. When you consider the stadium probably needs a rebuild, if you're talking from scratch, you're probably talking about $1 billion US dollars or £1 billion. The squad probably still needs another 200 to 300 million pounds. Carrington needs investment. The youth setup needs investment. Look at Manchester City. Look at what they offer in terms of the youth team. The women don't have any identity. The women's team needs investment, and it seems to be 4th or 5th down the Manchester United fans' priority list. For a club the size of Manchester United, there needs to be a strong women's presence. Women represent more than half of the global population. There are lots of women who are passionate about football. You want to attract them to the game? Have an attractive football team. Lots of money is required. We'd need to see what the proposal is by Jim Ratcliffe and Ineos.
Yeah, no, 100%. I think the women smacked 6 past Liverpool the other day. They're flying at the moment in regards to their division. So I'm sure maybe have a bit of an in closer look at their season because they are flying high. So, but yeah, it's a very good point. Now, just bear with us. A storm is hit after the hottest day in Sydney this year, and probably for about a year. It was a bloody humid and hot day. A storm is hitting. So if my window comes crashing in, or you hear a bit of hail,
I think my roof's about to flow off.
Yeah, so bear with us if you do hear a bit of crashing on the window. It's just the rain saying hello. But Larry, Alejandro Garnacho ties in with finances. We're going to have to give him a bit of money if he wants to stay at Manchester. I'm not sure what his contract situation is. I know it's come to an end. I think he maybe has 1 year after this, I believe.
He's got 1 year.
Right?
Yeah, he does. That's okay. Right.
1 year after this. So I'll bring this up here in regards to the latest James Ducker from the Telegraph here. So Man United are in advanced talks over a new contract for Alejandro Garnacho. Confidence that it will be wrapped up soon. Interest in the club have been eager to strike the right balance between rewarding players' rise and avoiding a repeat of the Anazai situation. I have heard 1 or 2 clubs in regards to potentially Real Madrid and Juventus are monitoring the situation. And I've sort of seen a few people come out in regards to allowing, or not allowing, but understanding Garnacho has been playing regularly in the first team because he's been contributing, he's providing results. He deserves to be in the first team for his performances, 100%. But they send potentially a bigger reason in regards to consistent minutes is Manchester United trying to convince him to stay. If he was getting half the game time, would he potentially look at Juventus or Real Madrid and think, well, I could get more game time there? So just in regards to the football side of things, handling this Garnacho situation at the moment, we look at, it was over 10 years ago where Paul Pogba was left out of a game where Raphael and Ji-Sung Park played against Blackburn. He said that's the last straw, and then they pulled Paul Scholes out of retirement the next week. That was the last straw for Paul Pogba. Alejandro Garnacho isn't going through that, but it does seem they are managing the situation, not going to throw the world at him, that they are going to sort of take their time with this contract and not pay over the odds. So just talk to me about the latest sort of the use of Garnacho in regards to the contract situation.
Yeah, it's really interesting, and this is why I thought it was important that we started on the Jim Ratcliffe point, because let's go a little bit deeper than that. Ten Hag has worked really hard on resetting the Manchester United culture, and I think a little bit of credit does also need to go to Richard Arnold, who's the CEO and replaced Ed Woodward, and some credit has to go to John Murtaugh as well in terms of his director of footballing position. It's not just about getting the right players. There is clearly an intention to reset the culture at Manchester United, and this kind of coincides with the £200,000 cap. I use that term loosely. I don't actually think it's going to be that specific number, but I think there is a move to say we're going to pay players what they're worth, and in return they're going to be part of a winning culture, a good culture, a culture that will see their career prosper. Positive results. If you're Alejandro Garnacho, the question then needs to be, where do you see your development being supported at a club that has the same stature as Manchester United? From all reports, he's on $7,000 a week. His agent reportedly rejected a £20,000 per week offer last week. I mean, look, I think if you're United, this is all a negotiation tactic. You start low. I'm sure the real number is probably a bit higher. Do you want to pay him $50,000 a week? I'd probably say no. The last player that United paid a higher contract to around that age was Mason Greenwood, and we kind of know the rest of that story. That's not to say that the same would happen with Garnacho, but the point is you don't know what happens with these young players. Anything can happen. Their career can go the wrong way. Off-field dramas because they're younger and they're more prone to mistakes. You don't want to give them the world too early. And I like the approach that United are taking here.
Yeah, no, look, I tend to agree. And I'll ask the people in the live chat in regards to Garnacho, if we have this contract, as Larry sort of rightly says there, the report that is suggesting he's on $7,000 a week. I'll take $7,000 a week. But in regards to players' wages at the moment, again, apologies if you can hear this. The rain is absolutely thumping down. If the internet does drop out, I'm sure Larry will continue. But $7,000 a week, yeah, okay, you compare that to other players in terms of his contribution, he should be earning a lot more. But where do you find that balance? Do you now give him $100,000 a week? Does that send the right message? I don't think it does. But ultimately, to keep him, how badly do we want to keep him? So in the live chat, let us know what are adequate wages for Garnacho or wage increase. We've talked about this salary cap, and okay, that story has gone away. But in regards to getting this wage structure under control, certain decisions need to be made at this level in regards to giving him the right contract to keep him motivated and sort of incentivize him to stay at Old Trafford, but you can't give him the world. And I think this is a fine balance because Garnacho has been brilliant since he's come into the team, but we also have to see, Larry, in regards to, I wouldn't say on-field, but potentially affecting on-field stuff with Garnacho, there has been one or two potential, we haven't seen it too sort of drastically, but there is one or two rumours, and even Erik ten Hag has confirmed himself, one or two potential attitude problems. Now, that we can see that as a good thing in regards to a young player with plenty of confidence. Ronaldo had arrogance at a young age, sort of thing, so that can be coached out of you when you sort of grow up and develop and mature. I'm sure that will be the case with Garnacho, but it is something where I think a lot of us fans, and I'm guilty of, say, give him the contract, give him what he deserves, he's going to be our new number 7. It's not as easy with this one. We do have to be quite careful with him.
Yeah, absolutely agree. Look, Ten Hag alluded to it after the Manchester City game, and I have to give some credit to the Dutchman here because he's been very careful in how he praises Garnacho. After the Manchester City game, he made comments such as he's got talent that not many players in the Premier League have. So he's praising him, he's acknowledging his ability, but he also acknowledged that he's learning to be part of a team. He's making comments that keep Garnacho accountable of his own actions. I think that's really crucial in an 18-year-old's career. I think United are right to take this approach. I guess my counter question to you and to those in the comments would be, like we said with Rashford, at what point is what he's asking for too much? Is there a number where United say, actually, you know what, we want to keep you, kid, but this number is too far?
Look, George with a comment here, 35 to 45 would be realistic. Look, I think, and you just put that into a percentage in terms of the increase on his current wages. It's crazy to sort of get that kind of increase, but ultimately I think it's probably fair. Look, I would even potentially push it in regards to potentially 50. Look, you're performing, you're on $50,000 a week. Now, when you compare that to someone like Jadon Sancho, who we're going to touch on in only a minute, you think $350,000, how can we be on $300,000 more? Obviously, that's not fair. That shouldn't be the case, but I can't go from Garnacho $7,000 to $250,000-$300,000 a week. That's also not part of the solution. So, look, I think I would be looking at potentially, if I'm desperate to keep him, which Erik ten Hag potentially is, I would say a maximum of $50,000. Hopefully get it around 30, 40,000, but I'll be willing to potentially go 50 when you're way up the sort of contribution in the squad. Matt here saying, as Rhea would say, get the contract out, put it on the table, let him sign it, let him write whatever number he wants to put it on there.
I think that's a bit giddy, mate.
Careful, Rhea. But look, a good, strong finish to this season. Garnacho scores a winner in a League Cup final, or sort of gets us into the top 4 title race. We could be having a very different discussion in regards to desperation to keep Garnacho. But I'll bring that man up here. He was on a little bit more money than Garnacho, but he is back in the team, or back in the club. Jadon Sancho, Andy Mitten, obviously been on the podcast before, broke the news yesterday that Jadon Sancho is back in full first-team training, and Zach Carrington had an article saying he has returned to the squad. So, Larry, well, look, we've sort of not disagreed. We've sort of seen both sides of the argument with Jadon Sancho, and this is a sort of make or break season for the Englishman, and it hasn't gone to plan so far. Obviously, he hasn't been part of the plan because he obviously hasn't been involved. So it's been not the ideal situation he's found himself in under the new manager, but he is back for the second half of the season. And a few things. Do you want to know? Like, do we as fans need to know why he was away? Like, do you want to know that information, or we don't need that, or just your sort of selfish feelings towards that bit of the story?
I'm not too bothered. I mean, if he comes back, he returns and he starts creating goals, he's part of the team and he's playing well, who really cares what he was up to? Whatever he did, it sounded like it worked. And ultimately, that's all we want. I think as a fan base, we've almost... I understand. You do want to feel like you understand more about these players that don the jersey, and you want to feel like you're a part of the club. And part of that is seeing the personality of the player. So if Jadon Sancho himself wants to come out and talk about what he's been going through or what this period has been like for him, then I'm all for that. I think a lot of United fans will get behind that because it's the player's choice. But I don't think we haven't earned any right to understand why, who, how. It's at the end of the day, it's a decision between the guy's boss and the player himself. And like I said, if he comes back and he kills it, no one's going to question it. Now, if he comes back and he doesn't perform, now Ten Hag's taken a big gamble here, pulling him out of the team. So if he's going to pull him in, no problem. He needs to come back on fire, because if he doesn't, I think his career might be on the line.
Well, just in regards to that, in the team, in the live chat, answer the question, does he feature soon? Like, okay, he's back in training. A lot of players are in training and don't make the match day squad. Do we expect Jadon Sancho to get back? He may be on the bench against Palace. I don't think he has travelled, but maybe the next game against Arsenal, maybe he'll be on the bench, because there are, I don't know, we have 7 or 9 people on the bench now these days. So there is room on the bench for highly paid professional players. So it might also be that thing, Larry, where we're all thinking the worst in regards to sort of potential, hopefully not, but potential health issues or mental health issues where he potentially needs time away. One of the potential criticisms a lot of people, not criticisms, but concerns or questions we've had towards Jadon Sancho is a little bit of potential weight or a bit of a fitness issue. Maybe it is simply Erik ten Hag wasn't happy with him and said, go get yourself fit, like physically fit. Maybe that could be the case.
Yeah, for sure. I think a lot of us have been watching Jadon Sancho since he's joined United. He tends to start games well, but he doesn't quite maintain that level of stamina for 90 minutes. And if he needed to work on that aspect of his game, then that's great. I think we've seen the work ethic of every single player in a Manchester United shirt improve this season. And even in the moments where he scored, it's easy to forget, Sancho has scored crucial goals this season.
Yeah,
the one against Liverpool obviously comes to mind.
I think there was a winner against Leicester as well. I don't know if it was the winner. I know he scored at Leicester. I forget if it was a 1-0 win or we scored a couple more goals. I forget, but it was a big goal at Leicester as well.
Yeah, you're right. There was a goal against Leicester. So at the end of the day, the ability is there. You don't produce the numbers he was producing at Dortmund if he wasn't capable of doing it. So, I think there's a player in there, and I think Ten Hag is being very thoughtful in what is the player's personality, what does he need, and how do I get him up to the level I required. I hope it goes off with a bang. If it doesn't, there will be some questions asked for sure.
I tell you what, you look what he's done with some of these players, and the latest example is Aaron Wan-Bissaka. If Jadon Sancho comes back and fires, and look what that kicks us on to have a successful season, whether that be a trophy or title challenge, whatever. If we have a good season and Jadon Sancho is a part of that, we're going to have to look at maybe 2 statues for Erik ten Hag by this time next season. In regards to the things he's doing and the way he's getting the best out of these players, and we don't know how this is going to turn out with Sancho. He might come back and he might not be at the races. Fingers crossed that's not the case, but it is a possibility. But if Erik ten Hag has got this right, and us for months here have been sitting, where is Jadon Sancho? What is happening? And all of a sudden, or throughout the whole time, it was the right decision by Erik ten Hag. Good. Look, he's not Sir Alex Ferguson yet, but my God, the first steps in his Man United journey are on track to be. Like, he has not put a foot wrong. For the fingers crossed, he has got this right. And something he has got right this season, Larry, the last man on the agenda, Harry Maguire. This is an interesting one. West Ham are considering a loan move for Harry Maguire. Now, look, I'm sure here West Ham are. I'm sure Aston Villa are. I'm sure a lot of Premier League clubs are considering bringing Harry Maguire in. The question is Man United and Harry Maguire also considering it? That's where I think this potentially be a bit of a sticking point. So talk to me about this news in regards to there is one or two reports from sort of West Ham journalists as well that there is a little bit of validity behind this one as well. And Harry Maguire on loan, I said on our 2022 year in review, sort of looking back, we had sort of a bit of a bold prediction or just predictions for the upcoming year. And I said, I think Harry Maguire, I think the captain leaves it in the transfer window, but I thought in the summer transfer window, I said, no, I can't see him leaving in January. Again, if I'm putting money on it today, I don't think Harry Maguire leaves in January, but there's a little bit of rumour, so let's talk about it. Do you think there is a slight possibility, especially if we've got a new centre-back in Luke Shaw, so he does have a stiff competition in front of him?
I think there's a very high possibility this happens, and I'll tell you why. If you look at what we mentioned already, again, if you're new to this channel, firstly, make sure you subscribe. But secondly, I've made the point before, Harry Maguire and the way Ten Hag sets out his defenders is I've cut out there. You're either a left-sided centre-back or you're a right-sided centre-back. Now, Harry Maguire has only been deployed as a right-sided centre-back this season. Fact. He's never played on the left where Martinez is or where Luke Shaw are. Fact. What I will say, however, is Victor Lindelof could easily be deployed as a right-sided centre-back. He's played the majority of his Manchester United career in that position. Victor Lindelof also represents a cheaper option in the squad. So if this is about raising funds, if we don't know whether the Glazers will come in or not, then placing Harry Maguire on loan is actually, it makes a lot of sense. The final point I'll make is Harry Maguire, as someone who had a decent enough World Cup, it has to be said, isn't playing any football. I think he's played maybe 2 games since we've returned, and we've played probably, how many games have we played since we returned? It has to be close to 10 now. He's played 2 games. He's the club captain. If I'm Harry Maguire, you need to start thinking about your career, mate, and I'd like to see him go play some football.
Do you think something we can praise him? You cast your mind to another centre-back who's currently another English centre-back at Manchester United. I think he still is. Obviously, Sir Philip of Jones. He's happy to sit around, and that's something we sort of criticise Phil Jones with. With Harry Maguire, we can't praise him for his performances this season, but something we can potentially, which we see in Harry Maguire, whether we're incorrect or correct, time will tell. But I think a lot of us do see in Harry Maguire potentially. I don't think he's the type of guy who will sit at Manchester United. Now, yes, he can sit back on a high wage and the prestige of being Manchester United captain, albeit without the armband. Well, he gets the armband when he comes on, but you know what I mean? Obviously, he could sit there and sort of take in all the benefits there. But I think a lot of us do see a scenario where Harry Maguire says, look, you know what? I will take this loan move to Villa or West Ham and play some football. And ultimately, if I was given the chance to do that or sit on the bench at Manchester United, you can bet your bottom dollar I'll be sitting on the bench at Manchester United. Harry Maguire, though, if he does go, I think this will be sort of forced on his half, and ultimately, I'll just have to give him a bit of praise for that.
I've got to say, I think Ten Hag has kind of put him in a corner, and I don't mean
that. It's brilliant by Ten Hag.
Yeah, it's a masterstroke. It's brilliant man management on the other side. We've seen his man management of Marcus Rashford. We've seen his man management of Alejandro Garnacho. We've seen his man management of Aaron Wan-Bissaka, who's come out of the wilderness, and you could argue is probably our first choice right back at the moment. But with Harry Maguire, you would know, Tom, you're probably the perfect person to answer this. You met him in Melbourne. You saw him present in a very small group of people about what it meant to him for him to be captain, what it meant for him to acknowledge his own faults last season. The problem is he was afforded the opportunity to keep his spot. Ten Hag gave him the rope to hang himself with. And unfortunately for Maguire, he hasn't been able to get back in. And it's very unfortunate for him because he's got the 2 World Cup finalists as defenders in front of him. And for that reason, like we said, I think he needs to... This is what I predict would happen, right? I think Ten Hag, if you ask Ten Hag, he'll want to keep Maguire because you want a deep squad. I think Maguire walks in at Ten Hag's office and says, Gaffer, thank you, but I need to go on loan because I need to think about the rest of my career.
Look, that's right thing. And you mentioned that sort of meeting in Melbourne. He did come across what we spoke to him at a bit of time, and it was a genuine chat. Like, it wasn't one of these interviews you see post-game where they read off a script. He was speaking genuinely and sort of talked about his form when we spoke last season wasn't good enough. And he says, I'm the first person to know that. I can't come out in interviews and say this or that. I do sort of get told what to say in terms of the PR line from the club. And he's saying, I know last season was good enough. Like every game, like my confidence was shot. I was trying to get better. That was making things worse. I was trying too hard. Ultimately, I've I'm the one who takes responsibility of saying it, and it was a genuine chat, and you could definitely see a genuine pride in. He did love Manchester, or did care for Manchester United, and did respect the fans and sort of their right to opinion and their right to criticise. And there was, you could tell around the sort of hotel and everything that the players did have a lot of respect for him. He did look like the captain in regards to sort of walking around sort of thing. Like, they did definitely follow him, but ultimately, I think that is somewhere we do have to give him a bit of praise. You mentioned you could see him walking into Eric Ten Hag's office, and I do as well. Now, ultimately, what do we need for Manchester United? We need good defenders. Does Harry Maguire go into that category of a title-winning defender at the moment? Probably not. So you say we don't need that. And if ultimately he needs to play football, that is away from Manchester United, and that will potentially, you could see, okay, technically it weakens us because we lose a player. And ultimately, this time of the season, bodies count as a huge attribute. So if we lose one, but ultimately, if that sort of increases the time of potentially a better defender at the moment in Victor Lindelof, well, that potentially increases Manchester United's chances of success. If Harry Maguire goes and has a great season and keeps West Ham up, well, Man United can say, hang on, we're going to get about $5 million for Harry Maguire a couple of weeks ago. Now he's kept West Ham in the Premier League. We'd probably get 40, 50 million for him. Ultimately, that 40, 50 million comes back into Manchester United, and we can sort of reinvest that. So ultimately, look, I like Harry Maguire from a personal level. On the pitch, it hasn't been good enough. We do need to look past that now. I've definitely got to that stage. But I think some of the criticism has been, well, I know some of the criticism has been well over the top, but the situation the club and player find themselves in now, best for both parties. Now, I do sit with your side of thinking in regards to Eric Ten Hag. He's probably saying not stay, because if you do have one or two injuries, it's not too bad having an England centre-back on the bench to come in and deputise. But ultimately, there is probably some truth in this rumour happening in January.
I think, you know what I think saves face with Man United and actually allowing Maguire to go? Malacia has seen an upturn in his form the last few games. And Malacia was so good against Manchester City. I think his performance kind of got, overshadowed I should say, because of so many good performances on the day, naturally. But Malacia put in a hell of a performance against, I would say, what's the best team in the world at the moment. And I think that puts a little bit of confidence in to say, all right, if Malacia has to be deployed, I can play Luke Shaw at centre-back. And ultimately, I think that's why, if you're Ten Hag, you might hesitantly just let the Englishman go.
No, definitely interesting and good line of thinking there. Matt here with it. I'm not sure if I agree or disagree here. He's saying the press would slaughter him if he went on it. Besides the press, how do you think, we're saying Harry Maguire here, he's going to go and he's happy to go and sort of play football elsewhere. But ultimately, the perception of Harry Maguire, Man United's captain, going from second in the table down to second bottom of the table, how would he sort of rock up to training? Because he knows the camera's going to be on him sort of when he walks out at West Ham's ground. I'm just thinking, ultimately, there is kind of a bit of pressure. You think, what a downgrade. He's not going to Tottenham, or he's not going to a team fighting for Europa League qualification. He's going to a relegation battle. I'm just thinking, ultimately, he'll see that physical drop in. Like, I'm playing here, now I'm playing here. That's going to take a knock off his confidence.
Maybe, or he could be vindicated by it. He could be galvanized. He could be motivated, and he could see it as, what does it do for his stock if he goes to West Ham and is part of the side that rescues them?
It'll come down to his ambition. His ambition is very interesting.
The thing is,
George Hewitt is Chelsea.
He's protected, I think. Oh, that's a shout too. That's absolutely a shout.
I think Tottenham. Go to Tottenham. If Antonio Conte's there, which Conte won't be there, but I don't know. If Conte managed to stay.
Tottenham makes a lot of sense, because if you look at the centre-backs they got at the moment, Maguire walks into that team.
Oh, the way they play on the 6-yard box.
Well, yeah, I mean, there is that, but just purely looking at the personnel that they have in the heart of defence, he is better than all those players.
Ed here with an interesting... I kind of see this happen. I kind of definitely don't see that. But an interesting one. Flip a coin. My opinion will change tomorrow potentially. But Newcastle, if they get Europe. Thoughts on that one, Larry?
Yeah, I don't know about that one. I can't see it.
I just think Newcastle's in their move to, I don't want to say commercialisation, but in terms of that perception, okay, they can have England centre-back or England striker or something like that. I think, okay, yes, they need the quality in terms of what they need to take that next step, but they're still building themselves as this big football club. At the moment, who's their number one striker? Like Isak. Like, okay, I know he's been injured, but he's been playing. Is he sort of selling shirts or sort of the front page of the Premier League website? Probably not. If you have England striker or England centre-back, that is something that, Newcastle, the cameras are on them.
The reason I'd say no to Newcastle, I mean, I think he'd fit in absolutely, but I mean, I think Botman is a hell of a player. I actually wanted United to go for Botman. Yeah. But the thing is, Botman is probably the similar profile of player that Maguire is in terms of the lack of pace and a ball playing centre back. And I just think when you're a team, I mean, common sense. I don't know any successful football team in modern history that's had two, I don't want to say slow centre backs as a partnership. So just for that reason, Maguire would be sitting on Newcastle's bench, and I don't think you want that for him.
Yeah, no, look, an interesting shout. And look, only 2 weeks until the window closes. So I'm sure we'll have an answer. I don't expect him to play against Crystal Palace tonight. I think it will be Rafael Varane and Lisandro Martinez. So before we do wrap up, Larry, first, is there any Man United news I have missed or you want to touch on? Or as we are less than 12 hours until kickoff, any match day sort of thoughts you do want to sort of touch on before we wrap up?
Is Jadon Sancho a chance of playing? That's probably the only one. I
haven't seen the photos of him travelling.
Yeah, you could see him just not travelling with the side to keep it out of the media, though. Ten Hag's that kind of manager.
Look, I'd love to see him. I think it's one of those ones on the bench, but ultimately, in regards to the importance of this one, it's not fair on him.
Rashford's a doubt as well. I think that's an important factor here. It could be the perfect opportunity to throw him in.
Do you throw him in, or do you put the performing Garnacho in? Because it's not just Crystal Palace. We're in a title race, Crystal Palace.
Yeah, I mean, yeah, I hear, but if Sancho's anywhere near his best, I mean, he can do it. Like at the end of the day, he's a big signing player. You got to back him to just do it. I've mentioned this to you before that when Sancho gets pulled back into the team, I think Sancho needs to start because he's been pulled out for so long. If you leave him on the bench, I think he's just going to be burning a lot of nervous energy. Get him out there from the start where he doesn't have to think and he can just express himself. Yeah,
no, look, it's a good shout. Look, fingers crossed. I'd love to see him involved. Obviously got Reading in the FA Cup, which I think is potentially sort of the ideal situation in regards to getting him a start and some minutes. But obviously time will tell. Ed here back on the Maguire thing. He'd play a lot more even as Newcastle backup if they get European football. That fixture congestion needs plenty of rotation. That's something we're forgetting with Newcastle at the moment. They're not having to deal with that sort of European fixture list, which they pretty much, I'll guess, guarantee have next season.
United have, sorry to cut you off, Tom. United have fixture congestion and he still doesn't play. So I don't think there's any guarantees.
Yeah, no, it's interesting. Which I came back in regards to, we'll finish on the Crystal Palace match. I said a couple of days ago, I was saying go full strength, 100%. Now my opinion's changed in regards to realising Casemiro's on a yellow card. I'm changing my whole midfield. But ultimately now the teams at the top of the table, the teams who win the most matches are the team who plays their strongest team 9 times out of 10. And that is what will make this team selection so interesting an hour before kickoff against Palace.
Yeah, absolutely. I tell you what, here's another question, and let us know if you're the 66 of you here. Let us know. Wout Weghorst, he starts surely. Has to. Is he scoring tomorrow?
Look, if he plays, he definitely. I think he will. I just think there's that vibe. There's that feel-good vibe when a player comes in. I could definitely see that happening, especially in terms of the way Crystal Palace defend.
How many games will it take for him to break his Burnley goal tally of 2?
Wouldn't you love a double against Crystal Palace?
Oh, confident, Tom. I love it.
And then the match winner against Arsenal. You'll have it done by the weekend.
I love it. So he's scoring a double against Palace and he's scoring one against Arsenal. Clip it up. I'll play it when we do the Arsenal match review when we inevitably win 3-1.
I'll take that. And obviously, George, Val Weghorst's biggest fan. I'll come back to Australia with a Weghorst shirt, 27 shirt. I've obviously got 27, a bit of a throwback to Marouane Fellaini. And obviously, there are definite similarities in regards to their stature. And look, Fellaini ultimately, as much as we criticise and rightly criticise Fellaini, remember when we did our first audio podcast, Larry, if anyone is new to the podcast did originate in a pub, an audio-only podcast. We recorded once a week in a pub. We did a team of the decade, 2010 to 2020. Marouane Fellaini was in that team of the decade.
He was in that team. I maintain to this day the best chest in world football.
Oh, 100%. But his contribution over the decade compared to the other dross we had to deal with, he was rightfully in the team. I think he was in the team. He was definitely in the discussion.
I don't think we'd see Fellaini anywhere near a Ten Hag side. I will say that.
Interesting. Yeah, and Ed here with a shout at 27, which does obviously bring some good memories. Makeda or 27 too. Never forget that goal against Villa. And Larry, who was the goal the week after against?
Oh, no
People
idea.
forget. He did. Well, it wasn't really his goal. I forget who had the shot. It might have been Rooney or Scholes, but against Sunderland, deflected off Makeda for another winner. And we all remember the Villa goal, but he did score the winner against, I think it was the winner, potentially an equaliser, but he did score the following week, a bit of a deflection. I have a feeling if it was Sunderland. Correct me if I'm wrong. Mate, here, good to see you, mate. Sunderland, George Sunderland, and Ed getting it as well. So all good memories in the live chat. So God, what was that? 2008, 2009.
Oh,
Bring back some better memories.
It's before
No, it was
that.
0809.
Was it? Jeez.
Yeah, so 2009.
Time flies. How old was I then? 12, maybe.
Time does fly. Time definitely does fly. But hopefully everyone did enjoy that. Do appreciate all the interactions in the live chat. Plenty of different opinions, plenty of different topics, which was good. And obviously it is match day. We don't often do a podcast pre-match. Now, Larry, what are we thinking? I'm not sure your work schedule or my schedule at the moment, but what are we thinking? Going live immediately post-match or wait for this time tomorrow night for a bit of a review?
Wait and see. I'll do my best, see how we go in terms of other commitments. But if we can be here to go live, you bet we'll be here. What I will say is we are on 1.46 subscribers. We're on the way to 2,000. Help us get there. There are 72 of you watching. If you subscribe, I'm sure there's a chunk of you that aren't subscribed. Help us get to that 2,000 mark. We're nearly there. Let's get there before the end of the season.
Fingers crossed that would be a great achievement, but do appreciate everyone in the live chat and all these constantly tuning in, giving us support. We do truly appreciate it. It's obviously just better than sort of let Larry and I talking to each other. I often sort of always change my opinion.
Not that bad.
No, but I often always do change my opinion because everyone thinks their opinion is right. It's your opinion. It's their natural in whatever field it is. But sometimes in the live chat or you give me a point or someone in our Facebook chat gives me a point and I'm hell-bent on my opinion, but I think, well, hang on. Well, he obviously thinks his opinion right, so who's right? And I obviously sort of sway my opinion at times, and I think that is a huge part because you do see on Twitter and social media, it's hell-bent. If someone disagrees, it just turns into a shit fight and an abuse contest. You say, well, you don't really get anywhere. I do think you do need to take a step back and sort of understand that you're not always right and sort of be willing to be not educated, but see a different side of things. And I think that is. I do watch a lot of YouTube content and I do see a lot of live chats of some other bigger channels and it's chaos. It's absolute chaos. It's a nightmare in there. But here it always is sort of respectful, level-headed and we do truly appreciate it, both Larry and I.
Well said.
And until then, leave a like on the video. That'd be great. Subscribe if you are new and make sure you join us for the Palace match, whether immediately post-match or about this time tomorrow when, fingers crossed, we're discussing we'll be 6 points off Arsenal then. And
if we survive...
It is rain. I don't know where this rain is coming from.
Rain outside.
It is pissing rain. Even when I'm wrong, I'm right. I do get that feeling. I know the feeling. I know that feeling all too well.
I'm sure your wife tells you the same thing, my friends.
But until then, hope the little one is doing well. The little one and the wife are doing well, Emad. But until then, hope everyone has a good one, and we'll chat to you then. Cheers.